All right, well, welcome to tonight's creative competition. Before we get started, I do have some announcements that we're going to go through. The first thing is the clubhouse hours. We've been reading these each week, but I want to make sure people are aware. The clubhouse is going to be open for all scheduled classes. They will be live in-person events, but will also be live streamed and will be recorded so that they're available for students who are registered for the class to watch 24/7. At this time, the clubhouse is open for all scheduled competitions. Again, these are live in-person events. They're also live streamed, recorded, and will be available on YouTube. And then, unless otherwise noted, we are not going to be opening the clubhouse for Zoom meetings, at least the ones scheduled through the end of March. Those are going to be conducted from home. We'll send out a link about usually 2 days before the presentation. As of now, those presentations are all members-only presentations, and they are recorded, and they will be available for future viewing by club members, but they will not be available on YouTube. We do want to make you aware of some updated COVID considerations. The board met and kind of talked through some things and tried to make an intelligent decision about mask requirements. And here's what we've come up with. All persons attending Friday meetings in person through March 19th are required to wear a mask at all times while in the building, no matter what their vaccination status. As for our classes, we are requiring all students and helpers who attend live classes through March 19th to wear a mask at all times in the building, again, no matter what their vaccination status. After March 19th, we are going to be dropping the requirement to wear a mask in the clubhouse. You're still free to wear a mask if you're more comfortable doing so. We're doing this primarily just to get a handle on how the first couple of weeks of the new CDC guidelines go. And also by March 19th, our winter classes will be pretty much over. So we wanted to at least finish those out before we drop the mask requirements. We do strongly encourage all non-vaccinated members and students to attend meetings and classes virtually for the time being. And I do want to point out that, if COVID numbers start to rise again, we may have to reimpose the mask requirement. Hopefully that's not going to happen. I know we're all anxious to get back to normal as much as possible. So, but we do want to be aware that we have a responsibility to our audience. Some upcoming competitions. March 11th, next week, is a bee competition. The deadline for entry to that was March 2nd. So if you haven't entered, you won't be able to enter. Remember, bee competitions are for students and newer photographers. So, hopefully you've gotten some entries in. If you haven't, but you'd still like to attend to kind of get an idea of what the photos are all about and how the critiques go, you're certainly more than welcome to do that. And then on March 25th, we have our final photojournalism night. The deadline for that is March 23rd. Please note that these are all digital competitions, including the bee competition. And that will conclude the competitions for the year. We don't have any other competitions for this club year, which ends May 31st. Some upcoming speakers. We do have on March 18th a members-only Zoom presentation. It's Peter Baumgarten, and his topic is Shoot for the Stars. So it has to do with astrophotography. Again, as I mentioned before, the clubhouse is not going to be open for that presentation, so you will get a link to that Zoom presentation probably on March 16th. On April 8th, we have another members-only Zoom presentation. Lisa Kuchara, who has spoken to the club before, is going to give a presentation on light painting. It'll be a little different than what Chuck Fitzgerald did with his kind of large outdoor light painting. This, I think, is a little bit more macro-ish, if you will. The clubhouse, again, will not be open. And also, in this case, the presenter has asked that we not record the presentation. So it will not be recorded. So if you want to watch that, you'll have to join us for the Zoom session that particular night. All right, other announcements. We are starting up field trips again. Not that we ever completely stopped them, but it was always difficult during COVID to find locations that were open. But we are trying to ramp up our field trips, and we do have a couple to announce. March 27th, which is a Sunday, bright and early actually, Bedford Reservation Waterfalls. They're going to go to the Great Falls of Tinker's Creek, and then to Bridal Veil Falls, and then to Deer Lick Falls. You can get more information about this field trip on our website, on our calendar. Get all the details of the starting times, and I believe there's a map there as well. Also on April 3rd, we have a trip to the B&O Roundhouse. If you're interested in trains, it's a great place to go. So again, you can get some more information from the calendar on that. All right. We also want to announce the return of the mentoring program. We had a member who was anxious to help get that kicked off again. Want to point out this is a members only program. You have to be a member to either be a mentor or a mentee. The kickoff is being planned for Tuesday, March 29th here in the clubhouse. An email was sent out this week looking for people who would be willing to be mentors, and there were some requirements for that as well, and that was all spelled out in the email. And there will be more information coming out in the snapshot, and also more information in an email coming out soon. So kind of keep your eyes out for that if you're interested in our mentor program. Great way to help learn about your photography and improve your photography. Registration for spring classes is now open. We got fundamentals of photography starting on Saturdays from April 9th through May 14th. That's 2 sessions each Saturday, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. Photoshop editing will start up on Wednesdays starting April 6th through June 8th. And then Lightroom is starting actually in a couple weeks, Mondays from March 21st to April 25th. So if you haven't signed up for that, we encourage you to sign up soon. We'd like to get our rosters somewhat finalized as much as possible so we can get the materials out to anybody that wants to participate. All right, and again, we encourage you to watch this and many of our Friday evening meetings at your convenience on our YouTube channel. So you can go to the link on the CPS website homepage. You look along the left-hand side, you'll see the little YouTube symbol, and you can click on that. Or you can open YouTube and search for Cleve Photographic. And you can subscribe to the channel, and then you'll be notified whenever a new video is posted. All right, so those are the announcements. And again, we'd like to welcome you to our third creative competition for the year, third and final for this 2021-2022 year. Tonight we have 73 images, 31 in the creative category and 42 in the pictorial category. And let me show you our judges for the evening. Our first judge is Jim Summers. Photography has played a large part in his life since 2010 when he first purchased a Nikon D3100 and a couple of kit lenses to take photos of his 8-year-old son playing sports. I think many of us got our start photographing children playing some kind of sport or activity. He started shooting rodeo events professionally in 2013 and currently shoots over 20 rodeo and Western equine events per year. He has been named Photographer of the Year 5 times by the Southern Extreme Bull Riding Association. Most of his imagery is focused on sports, wildlife, and landscape, although he says he loves to travel to the western states at least once a year to work on astrophotography under darker skies than are afforded here in Ohio. His work has been published in numerous newspapers, magazines, visitor guides, a book cover, and the cover of the Ohio Turnpike Commission annual report. He recently moved from the Akron, Ohio area to the Sandusky, Port Clinton area, where he will have greater access to many of the great parks and wildlife areas along the shores of Lake Erie. And his work can be seen at his website, www.jimsummers.com. So that's our first judge. And who's reading for Jim tonight? Oh, Dennis Ward will be reading Jim's comments tonight. Our second judge is George Kokar. As well as being an artist and an illustrator, he was an adjunct faculty member at Ashland University. He has had over 50 solo shows, has exhibited his work in over 400 group shows across the United States, most notably numerous Butler mid-year shows in Youngstown, Ohio, and also the Cleveland Museum of Art May Show. He has won numerous awards, including a Jurors Award at the Butler Institute of Art in 1985 and also 1998, and the Best of Show at the Ohio Exposition Center in Columbus in 1998. He's listed in Who's Who in American Art. His illustrations have graced the pages of numerous newspapers and magazines, including the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Esquire, Playboy, GQ, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, and he currently lives in Bay Village. And reading for George will be Dan Sandy. Okay. And our last judge is Herb Asherman. He's one of Cleveland's preeminent black and white portrait photographers. He works with an 8x10 view camera and film, printing his subjects in the resurgent art of handmade platinum. In addition to his work as an historian, writer, and editor, Asherman is the founder and director of the Cleveland Photographic Workshop and a sponsor of the 2021 Cleveland Photo Fest. So that's Herb Asherman. And one other, I didn't do a slide for this, but I want to point out for those that may not be, oh, by the way, Richard Ada will be reading for Herb. I normally have a slide for this, and I didn't include it this time for some reason. But the judging criteria, for those that might not be familiar with our judging criteria, each judge will score an image on a score of 5 to 9. And then the score for the image will be the total of all three judges' scores. Images are judged on composition, impact, and technique. So those are the three criteria for that. So with that, let's get started taking a look at our creative images. Yeah, go back. Okay, nope, that's not it either, is it? Nope. All right, well, we're gonna back this to the beginning here. Hang on a minute, we'll get there. You're getting a sneak preview of the images. Okay, I believe that's the first image.
Herb says the vertical, horizontal, and curved lines of this composition are very compatible and easy on the viewer's eye. The colors are soft and almost delicate, forming a soothing composition.
The image is called Around the Bend by Jane Sidney. 23 points, second place.
George says, I like the marble effect, but to me, there's a lot of this image that doesn't make sense. The boiling pot in front of, is that mountains in the front of the planet? A lot of the black on top, this could have been cropped, maybe a square format.
The image is called Bubble Over Bubbles by Eddie Knipper, 20 points.
A striking photo, says Jim. I can't tell if this was shot in infrared or post-processed as a black and white. Regardless, I do like the processing of the image. My critique is that my eye is drawn immediately to the large leaf and tends to stay there instead of the flower itself. While the detail of the leaf is interesting, I think the hero in the photo is the flower, and really should have been the central focal point of this shot.
The image is called Coneflower in Reverse by Vicky Wirt, 20 points.
Herb says, although light and bright, this overly diffused image demonstrates an eye for composition on a too oft repeated subject. The diffusion muddles and distracts from the central part of the flower.
The image is called Dahlia by Mary Kay Tallarico, 21 points, honorable mention.
George says, nice ethereal vibe in this photo. A nude dancing on some rocks with a misty background makes an intriguing story. Might have cropped a little more to get more focus on the figure.
The image is called Dancing Above the Clouds by Jackie Sieski, 24 points, first place.
Jim says, interestingly eerie shot of a lighting fixture that many might look at and never give a second thought. It makes the viewer wonder of what type of room this bulb is illuminating. I think the photo might work better if the light fixture was located in the top left third of the image versus the bottom right third. Overall, an engaging shot of a simple subject matter.
The image is called Eerie Light by Eric Withington, 21 points, honorable mention.
Herb says, although an interesting concept, the viewer is both confused and distracted with the competing imagery of the foreground and the overlay. Is the message of the photograph the passage of time, the visual confusion of the world in which we live, or bits and pieces of both? The intent of the picture is lost to the viewer who is trying to make sense of the image.
The image is called Ghost Hat by Jane Sidney, 23 points, second place.
George says, the fire-breathing lizard got my attention, but the fire compared to the rest of the photo seems fake. Some of the edges of the fire are too hard, especially on the bottom. They don't pictorially pop out from some of the branches.
The image is called Grumpy Gecko by Vicky Wirt, 20 points.
This image leaves me wondering how it was created, says Jim. It is like a Rorschach test that was created with a sparkler. The square crop works well with this image. There are a few areas where the color becomes too opaque and it loses the electric vibe, but overall a nicely done creative photo.
The image is called Kinetic by Marge Brady, 18 points.
Herb says, sensual and delicate, the tulips bend in the wind, glazed by a fine mist that forms droplets of water on their petals, elegantly rendered through a sensitive eye.
The image is called Lean on Me by Debbie Leesky, 17 points.
George says, interesting swirls, almost painterly effect to this image. Compositionally, it's solid. I don't really have any criticism, except that was done using some kind of filter, and the image is what it is.
The image is called Mausoleum at Lakeview by Ron Werman, 20 points.
Jim says, a unique play on coloring of these palm leaves and the coloring of the leaves is interesting and pleasing to the eye. However, the focal point the eye is drawn to doesn't really do much to add to the shot. I think it may have been better if the leaves of the top palm were a little more consistently fanned out.
The image is called Palm Fronds by Dave Saborik, 20 points.
Herb says, swirls of line and color form a pleasing composition, well seen and well lit. The viewer's eye is treated to multiple levels of comfortable colors and shapes.
The image is called Parts of Circles by Robert Boyle, 22 points, third place.
George says, interesting effect on the bird, but I would have liked to see more. Floating an image in the background doesn't intrigue me. Maybe doing something to the bird reflection or interesting effect in the water's width.
The image is called Resting and Scouting by Joe DiStefano, 18 points.
Jim comments, the zombie apocalypse is upon us with this photo, a curious composition that draws the viewer in. However, the more it draws the viewer in, the more it reveals some flaws in the photo. The green-haired figure doesn't quite mesh into the photo as smoothly as I would like. The woman in the foreground and the room is sharp and detailed where you can almost feel the textures, but the window and pipe that the green-haired model is holding onto is softer and seems a little out of place in the continuity of the image. Overall, this is an interesting concept.
The image is called Run by Jackie Sieski, 21 points, honorable mention.
A study in shape, line, and form, and in this case, the proper use of diffusion, gives this composition a true feeling for water we have mutually experienced. The image's softness adds to its surrealistic effect on the viewer's imagination.
This image is called Skyscape by Bob Kowaleski, 23 points, second place.
George says, another image using a filter. It takes a stagnant flower and put it into motion. Why? For what purpose? Filters are great for effects, but but unless there is a reason for using them, I would try to lay off.
The image is called Spiraling Spring by Debbie Leesky, 19 points.
Jim says, I really love the concept of this photo and many of the elements in it. While the figures are mainly in silhouette, there is still just enough detail visible in the shadows of the figures to draw the viewer into the shot a little deeper and study the photo more. My only critique is that the features of the model on the right are a little lost and not quite as defined as the other model. Great effort.
This image is called Sunset Silhouette by Susan Bestel, 19 points.
Cute, trite but cute. Every now and then we must treat ourselves to a cartoon. The viewer can be easily confused by the red shape on the top of the building, which appears to be an anamorphic face or shape.
This image is called The Bat Signal by Glenn Petranek, 20 points.
George says, really nice contrast between the white and black rocks. Almost has a Franz Klein abstract effect. This was one of the winners from this batch of photos. Great job.
The image is called The Maniac by Bill Keaton, 22 points, third place.
According to Jim, this is a nice photo of a canal in Venice. At least I am assuming this was shot somewhere in Italy. This shot works very well in portrait orientation. However, I am not sure that selective color works with this shot, as the red striped shirt of the gondolier seems to be floating on its own. If only the photographer could have taken this shot a few seconds earlier when the gondola was lined up in the reflection in the water. One other technical issue with the photo is that it seems to be tilted a few degrees to the left.
The image is called Toward the Light by Elda Baroni, 19 points.
Although stunning in shape, color, and design, this computer-created image challenges the viewing audience to describe it as photographic rather than a pure graphic. It has no true photographic qualities such as specific content or comprehensible imagery that we can describe as a picture.
The image is called Unraveling by Marge Brady, 19 points.
George says, I like the graphic and visual feel in this photo. Don't know if the photographer manipulated the image or if they just saw this and photographed it. Either way, it's a cool image.
The image is called Welcome to the House of Fun by Glenn Petranek, 22 points, third place.
Jim says, multi-exposure photography is a very creative technique that can keep a viewer engaged in a photo as they decipher the different exposures. This photo has some of that element, but ultimately my focus ends up in the overgrown brush in the foreground and is lost there. I would try this concept again and try to look for other opportunities for the different exposures to complement each other more.
The image is called A Walk in the Woods by Sarah Whalen, 18 points.
Herb says, another purely graphic design. The colors are earthen as seen pleasantly, perhaps from a distant height. But unless this image is a macro shot of a glass ball, for which there is no visual clue, it has no photographic context.
The image is called Bubble Planet by Eddie Knipper, 18 points.
George says, another filter flower image. This one, the elements are competing against each other. The flower should be more prominent.
The image is called Double Exposure Rose and Spider Plant by Angeli Persons, 17 points.
Very interesting lighting, says Jim. Not sure exactly if this was accomplished with gels or some sort of prism. Regardless, I like the inventiveness of this technique. Some of the stray hairs do detract a little from the shot, but overall a neat portrait concept.
The image is called Imprisoned by Bill Keaton, 22 points, third place.
Herb says, the viewer applauds the creator of this image for their technical skills at blending images either created or formed from photographs of glass. But once again, the image is graphic as it has no emotional or visual content other than its obvious design elements.
The image is called Kaleidoscope by Dan Hennessy, 20 points.
George says, I like the fact that the lone petal has more definition than the whole flower. I'm not a fan of the poster greeting card sentiments, but it does convey what it says.
The image is called Loves Me by Leslie Nutt, 17 points.
According to Jim, this is an interesting image of the kayaker in what appears to be the folds of fishing nets. With the kayak at the right of the frame, it takes the viewer's eye as the focal point, but then immediately leads it out of the frame. Normally, you want a subject like this on the left side so that the eye is following it through the shot. It may make it difficult to move the kayaker to the left of the frame given the makeup of the background. You may need to rethink the composition of the image.
This image is called Man Breaking Through the Net by Elda Baroni, 18 points.
Herb says, the viewer has absolutely no knowledge as to how this image was constructed or taken, which adds to the mystery of the image itself. If it is a digital composition, it is extremely well done. If it is a straight shot, it is nothing short of remarkable and beautifully conveyed. This is definitely the most creative image in the selection of images presented to this viewer.
The image is called Sombrerissimo by Susan Bestel, 22 points, third place. And that concludes the creative images. Now we'll move on to pictorial images. We're going to be, hang on one second, let's see. I believe this is the first one. Yep. And this is...
George says, nice lighting on this bird. Really like how the sun shines through the bird's nose. Nice sharp focus on the subject.
The image is called A Different Perspective by Elda Baroni, 21 points.
Who doesn't love a dog wearing a tiara, says Jim. The image is well lit and very sharp. It is difficult to find any technical fault in the image. My only critique is that the dog's fur in the bottom right corner of the image gets a little lost and blends into the background. Maybe if the background was a little darker, it would help make the white fur stand out a little more.
The image is called Birthday Diva by Barb Cerrito, 21 points.
Herb says a pleasing geometric and a soft, almost monotonic palette. The lines of the image carry the eye in through a delicate journey of solids, space, and design.
The image is called Bridge and Building by Richard Ader, 21 points.
Very beautiful building. I can see why a photographer would take a picture of it, says George. I hope they took other shots of the lampposts and the wonderful carvings of some of the building features.
The image is called Down on the Corner of Dearborn and Schiller, Chicago, Illinois by Fran Marino, 20 points.
Jim says, a nice portrait that engages the viewer to wonder what the subject is looking at out of the frame. The lighting is a little harsh as it looks like the lighting is a little harsh as it looks that it was taken in the midday sun, but still a well-composed image. It may have been made a little better if you had moved a little further to the right before taking the shot. I would have been a little better if the wall encompassed the entire background. Also, if possible, using a wider aperture to create a little separation from the subject to the wall would have helped.
The image is called Egyptian Worker by Richard Ader, 21 points.
Herb says, it is as if the tulips are challenging the viewer to contemplate both his and its mortality. Almost brazen in shape, the upper tulip reaches outward while the middle tulip directly confronts the viewer. Unfortunately, the two remaining tulips flow deftly to the netherworld of flowerdom, embracing their final rest.
The image is called Four Tulips by Leslie Nutt, 23 points, honorable mention.
George says, nice photo of a pretty girl. Composition is solid. I don't really have much to say about this photo.
The image is called Grace by Susan Bestel, 20 points.
A well-composed and themed image, says Jim. While the lighting is well done and everything is sharp in the photo front to back, it might help to pull back on the highlights a little, as there are a few areas of white fur on the dog where the definition of the fur is lost. I would like to see this same composition but shot from a lower vantage point so as to use the front paws of the dog to lead the viewer's eyes into the image.
The image is called Guarding the Gold by Barb Cerrito, 21 points.
Herb says, sensual and sensuous drops of water glide over a twisted stem of green set against a softly modeled background. What would have made this image absolutely fabulous would have been a deeper depth of field as to put the scene into crystal clear, sharp focus.
The image is called Hanging Out on a Spiral by Ron Werman, 22 points, honorable mention.
George says, this is one of my favorite of this show. Love the horse head breaking the symmetry of the trailer.
The image is called Horsing Around by Bill Keaton, 26 points, first place.
Jim says, a nicely done sunset image. It gives me a great feeling of tranquility as I look at it. I can definitely place myself in the image watching the sunset. I think that the image could be cropped a little tighter, pulling up from the bottom right-hand corner. This would move the gazebo a little further to the right and more in line with the 1/3 axis of the image, and may be even more pleasing to the eye.
The image is called Lake Erie Sunset by Mary Kay Tallarico, 22 points, honorable mention.
Herb says, this viewer has always maintained the mantra that if it's interesting enough to think about, it's interesting enough to make the effort to take a picture. As a composition, the image is well balanced and moderately interesting. From an emotional perspective, there isn't much emotional perspective.
The image is called Logging Trucks Rolling by Fran Marino. 22 points, honorable mention.
George says, nice photo of the lighthouse. I feel compositionally that the boat could have been a little bigger and lower in the water, meaning you would have had to have taken this photo a few minutes before.
The image is called Lorraine Lighthouse by Dennis Wirt. 21 points.
Jim says, interesting close-up of a foxtail weed seed head. Sometimes a simple subject can make for an interesting image. The dew on the hairs outline the seed head perfectly and provide visual interest. There is a bit of an excess of negative space in the image, and I think cropping to either a 4:5 or 1:1 ratio would benefit the image.
The image is called Morning Dew by Joseph Miko. 22 points, honorable mention.
Herb says, delicately rendered in beautiful tones. The background is overwhelmingly dark. This flower floats on the screen. This viewer would prefer a context within which the flower is seen.
The image is called Peony by Dave Saborik. 22 points, honorable mention.
I like the effect of a glowing matchstick and the smoke swirling around it, says George. I might have cropped the top a little more, a little less black.
The image is called Smoking Matchstick 1 by Eddie Knipper. 21 points.
Interesting shot of a female mallard, says Jim. Nice detail showing the various coloring of the feathers. The position of the wing is interesting, as that is not how you would normally see it spread out, but it certainly makes the image unique. I think the image could have been shot closer to water level. It may have provided a little more separation of the subject from the background and overall improved upon the photo.
The image is called Stretching My Wings by Joseph Miko. 22 points, honorable mention.
Herb says, an interesting landscape. The lighting is broad daylight and overly flat, washing out all the color and texture of the rock. Granted, you are when and where you are, and you make your record accordingly, but the lighting doesn't do the landscape justice or give it the aesthetics with which it is due.
The image is called The Badlands Number 1 by Robert Boyle. 21 points.
George says, interesting pattern in the field. Has a feel of isolation, coldness, etc. I don't know if you could add anything more, or if you would want to, if that is what you were trying to achieve. This photo could be interpreted in many ways, and that is a good thing.
The image is called it's either The Ice Age or The Ice Age by Sarah Whalen. 17 points.
Jim says, I think this landscape image works well in a portrait orientation. Nice use of the rocks in the foreground to lead the viewer into the scene. The image seems to be a little cool, and I would think it would benefit from adjusting the white balance a little to warm it up.
The image is called The Ledges by Dennis Wirt. 20 points.
Herb says, this image is documentary, not pictorial. Well shot, well seen, very well timed or panned, yes. Emotionally engaging, no.
The image is called The Thunderbirds by Joe DiStefano. 20 points.
According to George, rock and roll. Great indoor shot of a concert. I want to go see this band based on it. Nice resolution. Really like the way you captured the dynamic lighting and visual effects.
The image is called Trans-Siberian Orchestra by Eric Wethington. 22 points, honorable mention.
According to Jim, this is a nice studio shot of these flowers. The image is well composed and lit nicely. One critique to this image would be that the flower on the right seems to be unnaturally floating in space due to the shadow on the stem. Not sure if this was a single light setup but an additional light would have maybe helped to alleviate this issue.
The image is called Two Tulips by Leslie Nutt, 24 points, third place.
Herb says, the image would be much stronger if the snow were cropped out. The viewer's eye always goes to the lighted part of the photograph first, which in this instance is distracting from the rest of the scene. Removing the snow increases the delicacy of the image.
The image is called Winter by Sarah Whalen, 19 points.
Wonderful focus. Nice sharp detail on the bird. Love the effect of the reflection broken up in the water.
The image is called Wipe Your Feet by Bob Kowaleski, 22 points, honorable mention.
Jim says, great texture in this image with all of the fur on the dog and the hat. Lighting is very good and the image is well exposed. I may have chosen a different color for the background as it just doesn't complement the image. Overall, a great playful shot.
The image is called Baby, It's Cold Outside by Barb Cerrito, 20 points.
The image is dramatic, creative, colorful, and very well conceived. This viewer chuckles at the intensity of its design and color elements.
The image is called Bamboo Grove by Jane Sidney, 22 points, honorable mention.
George says, this photo has the graphic appeal of a medical illustration. If that is the effect you wanted, then there is nothing to critique.
The image is called California King Snake by Marge Brady, 20 points.
A very surreal and interestingly lit image, says Jim. I like that I continually look at it and wonder what was used in the photo. Glass, acrylic, Lower Antelope Canyon. There are a few distractions in the image that I do find my eye wandering to. The white highlight along the bottom part of the curve is a bit distracting and draws the eye to it immediately, as well as the short vertical line in the right-hand side of the image looks a bit unnatural to the rest of the image. Overall, though, an interesting photograph.
The image is called Chihuly Detail by Dave Saborik, 22 points, honorable mention.
Herb says, the image is dramatic, creative, colorful, and very well conceived. This viewer chuckles at the intensity of its design and color elements.
The image is called Daddy DoorDash by Mary Kay Tallarico, 22 points, honorable mention.
I like the composition, says George. Bright, not hot colored chairs contrasting against cold gray, white, and light blue.
The image is called Euclid Beach Pier by Ron Werman, 24 points, third place.
Jim comments, a pleasing image that leaves me wondering how it was created, which is a good thing. I do like the 16:9 ratio and think it works well for this image. There is a sense of motion that is conveyed in the image and can imagine watching the leaves float down a stream. Hard to find a lot of fault with the image, though there is some unnatural blue color where the leaves meet the water. This could be easily fixed in Photoshop so that it matches the rest of the water. Also, depending on the original image, maybe the leaves could be positioned a bit lower in the image. Overall, a lovely image.
The image is called Floating Leaves by Joseph Miko, 24 points, third place.
Crop the leg off the left side, says Herb. Tighten the image towards the center of the frame and she will become much more focused and dramatic. Move her right hand out of the scene, pose her fingers closer together and more delicately, or place them more gently on her chest. Her fingers look like a claw imposed from another photograph.
The image is called In Studio by Eric Wethington, 21 points.
George says, I like the photo. It tells a story. Don't exactly know what he is doing. Something with glass. I might have cropped a little more on the left side. Some of the objects are a little distracting.
The image is called It Must Be Perfect by Robert Boyle. 23 points, honorable mention.
Jim says, a great classic composition of the Washington Monument and reflecting pool. I think if the photographer would have been able to take the shot from a few feet further to the right, they would have been able to create an image that was more symmetrical. The image is a little over-processed. Maybe easing up on the contrast would help with this image and make the sky look a little more natural.
The image is called Lincoln's View by Joe DiStefano. 18 points.
Herb says, a classic Daguerrean picture and pose from yesteryear, rendered in glowing color. The portrait would be much more classic with something as a flower, a book, or a puppy in her lap rather than just her crossed hands. There is an opportunity with this model and scene to create a truly seminal image with a better eye to detail.
The image is called Little Princess by Jackie Sieski. 26 points, first place.
George says, looks like Hawking Hills. Solid composition, wonderful colorization on the rocks and foliage. I don't think you could have done any better. Great job.
The image is called Lower Falls, Hocking Hills by Bob Koleski. 23 points, honorable mention.
Ribbit, says Jim, lovely bokeh and a tack-sharp subject that captivates the viewer. Hard to find anything to critique in this image. If I was really going to nitpick, then I would say maybe if the image was rotated a few degrees to the right so that the eyes and mouth line of the frog are closer to being on the horizontal plane, it might improve the image. Nicely exposed and great composition.
The image is called Mexican Waxy Frog by Vicky Wirt. 26 points, first place.
Herb says, a scene from the steppes of Mongolia, perhaps. Great travel shot and absolutely perfect timing, as you can see the horse on the right does indeed have, in a full gallop, all 4 feet off the groups simultaneously. Mybridge would be proud.
The image is called Mongolian Horse Race by Richard Ader. 23 points, honorable mention.
According to George, this is a solid composition of a photo of a plant. I think you achieved what you were trying to when you took this photo.
The image is called New Life by Fran Marino. 19 points.
Jim says, this is an interesting photo with a lot of different elements at play in the image. The wildflowers make a nice foreground element, though there are some cut off at the bottom and along the right side of the image. I think if the image was cropped in a little from the bottom right corner, it would help to clean up the edges some.
The image is called Niagara Falls Wildflowers by Glenn Petranek. 25 points, second place.
Herb says, black and white is the right medium for this well-balanced graphic scene. The lines play to the viewer's eye and certainly holds his attention.
The image is called Windows by Debbie Leesky. 18 points. And that concludes tonight's competition. We want to thank all of our judges and those members here who read their comments. We appreciate that. And again, we want to thank you for everybody that entered the competition. And if you have any information, would like more information about the club, contact us at info@clevelandphoto.org. So thank you all and have a good night.